Fellow millennials of the internet, it has gone too far. For years, we have stood by while they made fun of us for our avocado toast, for our participation trophies, and for our emotional availability. But today, it has finally gone too far. That's right. Gen Z, the boomers, they're coming together and collectively for different reasons, making fun of us for the only thing that has kept us together this far, our love of Harry Potter. There's a lot of reasons to love Harry Potter. Whether you read all the books the night they came out, like the thousands of fans that stood in line to read them, or you casually watched the movies and fell in love with the Wizarding World, there's a lot of things that Harry Potter did to become as popular as it is. But today I want to talk about the reason why you clicked on this video. The fact that years later, we're still reading and talking about Harry Potter. It's because I think the series as a whole does something that none of the other franchises from the time period did nearly as well. And today, I want to talk about that. Now, like many of us, I've been spending a lot more time indoors and by myself, and that's led to rereading a lot of books from my childhood, whether the physical books or doing audiobooks. And I reread Harry Potter and I was shocked at what I found. I have a lot of fond memories of the books. It's honestly probably my 7th or 8th reread of the franchise, but this most recent time struck me because there was a lot more going on in the stories that I didn't pick up on when I was a teenager reading them for the first time. There's a quote from Italo Calvino, who has a great essay about the 14 criteria of what makes a book a classic book. The very first point he makes is a classic is a book about which people usually say, I'm rereading, and never I'm reading. And that's been my experience with Harry Potter. When you talk to somebody about Harry Potter and they're reading it, even for the first time, it's almost never, I discovered this series, and it's always, I finally got around to reading this series. Now, despite the success of a lot of young adult fiction books in the early thousands, I think in large part started by the Harry Potter franchise, I think the reason we're still talking about Harry Potter is that despite being 7 books written across a period of 10 years that vary drastically in tone and setting, they carry a theme that is shockingly consistent and I think has a lot to teach us today. In fact, I'm gonna go so far as to say the theme of Harry Potter and how it resonates with us today as an adult audience is why it's still the cultural phenomenon that it is. Let me explain what I mean. Now, theme can be a strange word or a daunting word, but in the context of stories, it's shockingly simple. John Truby, an expert on writing stories who I quote on the show a lot, says that theme is the very structure of the story and all other elements of the story come out of it. It's the central thing that continues to resonate with us. And in Harry Potter, I think it's the thing that stuck with us for all these years. It's why as adults, we're still talking about it. And I think that theme can be summed up in the words from Dumbledore to Harry in the Chamber of Secrets, when he says to Harry, it is our choices far more than our abilities that make us who we are. Now, whether you're reading the books or watching the movies, I think that Harry Potter is at its central core about destiny. More specifically, it's about the conflict between destiny and choice. And this plays out from the very beginning with the character of Harry. He's an orphan who lives under the stairs. His goal in life is to never be noticed by his family because when they notice him, bad things happen. And while he's a person that strange things tend to happen around, they're never because of what he does and he never wants them to happen. And then suddenly in a twist of events, he discovers that he's not a nobody who lives under the stairs. He's actually the boy who lived. The child of destiny, the person who defeated he who must not be named, which is all news to him, along with everything else in the world. See, Harry is thrust into a world he doesn't understand for reasons that he didn't choose, and he has no choice in the matter. And he's just thrust into this situation, both because of what his parents did, and then literally because he's lived in the Muggle world his whole life, and he's thrown into the Wizarding world, and he has no choice in the matter. He is just stuck dealing with his destiny. And that identity crisis goes all the way through. Harry doesn't even know if he's a good person. He struggles with over-identifying with Lord Voldemort to the point where he thinks they're too linked and he might be a threat to his friends. Now, that quote from Dumbledore I said earlier that I said summed up the theme of Harry Potter as a whole comes from the end of the Chamber of Secrets. Harry is having a conversation with Dumbledore where he basically says, I feel like I should have been a Slytherin. I'm a Parselmouth. The only reason the Sorting Hat didn't put me in Slytherin is because I asked not to. And Dumbledore says to him, well, of course, then you're not a Slytherin, because it is our choices far more than our abilities that make us who we are. In fact, I think the Sorting Hat in the context of Harry Potter is the first time that we're introduced to the theme. It's the first time that the idea of destiny versus choices comes into conflict. And it comes into conflict for more than just Harry Potter. He is in many ways the quintessential Slytherin, but he's not alone. If I were to tell you there was a witch at the school, 11 years old, who had already read the entire history of Hogwarts, had it memorized before she set foot in the school, and would become the most prodigious, well-read, well-known magician of her time, you would probably think she would be a Ravenclaw, but her name is Hermione Granger, and she also chose to be a Gryffindor.
Look, stop. You're going to take someone's eye out. Besides, you're saying it wrong. It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
You do it then if you're so clever.
Go on.
Wingardium Leviosa. Wingardium Leviosa.
Wingardium Leviosa.
And if I were to tell you there was somebody who was the most lovable friend, who didn't necessarily have any particular skills or wasn't necessarily better at anything than anybody else, but was loyal to a fault and hardworking, you would probably put them in House Hufflepuff. And yet Ronald Weasley also finds himself in Gryffindor.
That was bloody brilliant.
Oh, thank you for that assessment, Mr. Weasley.
Now, the point isn't that the Sorting Hat is bad at its job. Quite the opposite. The point, rather, is that from the very first book, Harry Potter is setting up this conflict between your natural abilities, your latent characteristics, and your choices. And the fact that your choices are what actually make you who you are, not the things that you didn't choose. We could be here all day talking through examples from Harry Potter of the conflict between people's natural abilities and their actual choices. It plays out in Sirius Black, who has a deep family lineage of Death Eaters, or in Severus Snape, who, despite his own allegiance to the Dark Lord, chooses a different path entirely, even at the ultimate personal cost to himself. In fact, at a granular level, what oftentimes happens in the plot of each of the Harry Potter books is that Harry is trying to go to school and trying to live an ordinary life, and there's always some kind of external force represented by the destiny interjecting its way, making his life anything but ordinary. It could be somebody putting his name into the Goblet of Fire, or a house elf being tricked into trying to kick him out of school, or any of the other things that seem to happen book by book beyond Harry's control that always force him into this role of the child of destiny. All of that just seems to throw the rest of the story into motion. I think the reason we love Harry Potter is because of his choices. Now, the theme of choice and destiny in Harry Potter is completed in the end. See, up until this point, Harry has won most of his matches with either some kind of luck or somebody loving him or some kind of trick up his sleeve. But when Harry unites the Hallows, he doesn't square up with Voldemort. Harry doesn't take the Hallows and gear up for a wild, wild west showdown with Voldemort where they're staring at each other and there's a quick draw of the wands and he rides off into the sunset on a broomstick. Instead, Harry unites the Hallows for a different reason. Not to escape death, as they were originally invented, but to choose his own death, where paradoxically, the boy who lived became the boy who chose to die. Now, there's a lot of young adult books from the early 2000s that spawned epic fandoms, many of which I love. I think of Hunger Games or Twilight, or a personal closet favorite of mine, Eragon. But I think the reason that we still think about Harry Potter, and we're still talking about it today, that I've alluded to, is the fact that the theme of Harry Potter reflects the spirit of the age that it was written in. See, I think Harry Potter does a unique job of capturing the quote-unquote millennial experience, by which I mean somebody who has come of age or been an adult in the last 20 years. Because I think all of us walk around with different forms of destiny, different things about our life, self-beliefs that impact us and affect us that we never really chose. It could be a negative self-belief like, I'm just bad at math, numbers aren't my thing, or I have a slow metabolism, I'm not that athletic, or I'm just not a creative, I can't really do that. Or it could be a positive belief. Maybe you're amazing at math, maybe you're an amazing athlete. It could also be dreams, maybe your own dreams, but far too often somebody else's. A lifestyle you saw on the internet that sounds amazing even though those people are miserable. Or maybe it's your parents' dreams, one that you have spent a lot of your life following but never really wanted. Whatever it is, I think that Harry Potter teaches us a valuable lesson, that no matter what destiny has been thrust upon you, it's not really your destiny or abilities that make you who you are. It's your choices. In fact, going to the gym is a much more meaningful statement about who you are than your self-belief about your metabolism or your athleticism. Picking up a pen and drawing something is a much more meaningful statement about your creativity than some internal feeling from some point in your childhood. The reason that that's true is what I think is the theme of Harry Potter. It's that same Dumbledore quote.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Thanks for watching. My name is Zach from The Hero's Journal. I'm a big Harry Potter fan. I've been thinking about this subject for a long time, so I hope it was helpful. We started The Hero's Journal to help people turn their goals into an epic quest and to understand the stories that they tell about themselves and develop better narratives. So if you want to learn more or purchase a journal, you can visit theheroesjournal.co. Finally, we post videos every week talking about story theory, our favorite fandoms, and how they play out in our personal lives. So if this video was helpful to you or that sounds interesting, hit subscribe, hit like, and we'll see you next week.